It's wonderful to be here with you today. I actually came into your country about 3 days ago. Wanted to visit the Yellow Box and my dear friend Dave and the team here, Patrick with New Thing, and just celebrate God's grace to this church. You're impacting us all the way over in Africa. I'm a church pastor in Nairobi, Kenya. And I've always passionately believed in starting up new churches. We're trying to plant 300 churches by the year 2020. And we're at about 105 right now. And, really going forward with all our guns blazing. And then I met Dave Ferguson. And then he messed me up. I was doing all this work, planting churches, and I meet Dave and I read his book, Exponential, and I think, this guy gets it. This guy understands what I'm trying to do, but he's got all the right terminology and all the right pictures and all the right methods to do this, and I didn't know this is what I was doing. Wow, I need to meet this guy. And lo and behold, God made it possible. I was at a conference and there was Dave, the great, amazing Dave. He was there. And, I got him to autograph my copy of Exponential, and we became friends. And he's teaching me a lot of things about church planting and about residence and about moving from addition to multiplication and all those wonderful things that Dave talks about all the time. And you've got a great pastor, I tell you. And I told him this morning, Dave, I just really honor you. You're a great guy. And what I like most about you is just your humility. If you didn't know who Dave was, you'd think he's just, another guy sort of sitting around, hanging around, gently speaking in a quiet voice. And you don't know that Dave, the ground shakes when he walks, and the sun burns brighter, and the sky is bluer. And when we get to the heavenly feast, there will be Jesus seated at the head of the table, and to his left will be Billy Graham, and then will be Mother Teresa, and then will be Dave. And he's your pastor. Wow. You've got a good deal here. I wish I was a member of this church. So anyway, Dave asked me to come and preach today. And, we're having a fun time in the 9 o'clock service and later on at 11 o'clock. And then they all disappear and they leave me behind. And I'm supposed to be going down to Florida, and they didn't tell me they're all getting on a plane at lunchtime, and I'm going to be left behind here, in Chicago. And I guess I'll make my way down tomorrow, and I'll find Dave, and I'll tell him, Dave, what was the deal there? You didn't tell me that I don't know, maybe he's at Disneyland right now, like enjoying the place and such. But it's nice to be here. And since we're here, we're getting to meet one another. Hey, bring out the fruit and bring out the cakes, and let's have a ball here tonight. And we won't tell Dave that he missed a party in his own church. But it's wonderful to be here tonight. And I just want to say thank you guys for who you are and the way that you continue to impact the world around you, not just here in Chicago, but indeed even as far as Africa. May God bless you for being who you are as his followers. Today, we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 through to verse 16. And so if you have, your mobile phone, switch on, turn to Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 through 16. I'm going to read it from the New International Version. This is our text for today. This is what it says. You are the light of the world. And like a city on a hilltop, it cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. Let your light so shine among men that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of a railroad guard at a railroad crossing, manning the crossing at a bridge, who at 2 a.m. was sitting in his little cubicle, half asleep, when the phone rang. And he picked up the phone, and there was an urgent voice speaking, shouting into the phone saying, "Stop the train, stop the train, stop the train. The bridge is not strong enough to take the weight of this train. Stop the train." And even as he heard these words, he could hear the train coming down the tracks, coming down. And he slammed down his phone. He picked up his lamp. He ran out to the railway line, and he waved his lamp to try and get the attention of the train driver. But the train whooshed past him and onto the bridge. And sure enough, the bridge was not strong enough to hold up the weight of the train. And it fell apart, and that night many lives were lost. And so the railroad company took this man to court, charged him with negligence of duty. And he pled his case and said, "I waved the lamp, I waved the lamp, I tried to catch the attention of the driver, I waved the lamp, I tried to stop the train." And because they did not have enough evidence otherwise, he was acquitted and allowed to go free. But as he left the courtroom, it is said that there were tears streaming down his cheeks. And he was heard mumbling under his voice, "I waved the lamp, I waved the lamp," but the lamp was not lit. My dear friends, Jesus says, "You are the light of the world." But is your lamp lit? Can the world see the radiance of Christ in you? You see, many people are like a lamp that has a wick, that has oil in it, but it hasn't been lit. For some of us, we had the beautiful, amazing story of leaving the old life with its failures and beginning a new life of promise and hope. But somewhere along the line, we took a wrong turn. We turned back to the old ways, and the lamp that we became was snuffed out. The light was turned down. You are the light of the world. Is your lamp lit? Can the world see the way of Christ in you? Can they see the hope of Christ because of your life? Your witness of Christ? Or is it so dim that they cannot see anymore? You see, for the people on that train that night, their greatest concern was that would the food in the dining cart be enough for all of them? Their greatest concern was, will we be able to sleep at night because of the rocking motion of the train as it goes down the track? They had no clue that they were headed for destruction. And so it is in our world today. When we go to the mall and rub shoulders with people and, as we shop, their greatest concern is, will I be able to meet my bills at the end of the month? Will I be able to pay my rent? Is my job secure? Will it still be there next month? They have no clue that they are headed for destruction unless they can see the light of Christ burning brightly within you. But if the light has been snuffed out, it doesn't matter how hard you wave the lamp, because there is nothing to see. If at all they see, they can only see the inconsistencies, maybe the hypocrisy, and they cannot see the love and the grace of God. My dear friends, so vital is this issue, this question, that Satan will do whatever he can to snuff out your light. And he will throw temptations your way, and he will bring trials and hardship and tribulation and discouragement and indiscipline, and he will throw down anything towards you that he can to snuff out your light and to bring you down. And he will bring sickness to loved ones. so that you're distracted from following Christ. And he will attack your marriage so that you give up in your faith. And he will do whatever he can to bring you down. Maybe you're here today and you accepted Christ as your Lord and Savior some time back. And you began with joy and your light burned bright. But somewhere along the line, the pursuit of the happy life and the pursuit of career snuffed out your faith. There just wasn't time to follow after Christ, to read his word, to spend time talking with God. And year by year, it's become dimmer and dimmer and darker until the flame doesn't seem to burn anymore. Maybe it's that you made a wrong turn and it wasn't your intention, but you became overwhelmed with your sense of failure as you struggled with addictions to alcohol or to sex or to drugs or to pornography, and the shame, the overwhelming shame that comes over you. And you don't know that you can go back to the Father and ask for a new beginning. And so you live as though it doesn't really matter to him. You try and brush it under the carpet. You try and pretend it's not really important, that God doesn't mind, but there is a conviction of the Holy Spirit on your heart that something is wrong and that you need to deal with it because the light has been snuffed out. And let me say, my dear friends, that nothing snuffs out the light of Christ in us faster than when we have hidden sin that we won't deal with. And once the light is out, then people cannot see the hope of Christ in us. Hidden sin in our lives completely quenches our light. And it's like rot to the bones, and it wears you down and it haunts you. And you live with a constant fear of discovery. When people look at you, you wonder, do they know? Do they know? Has it become public? Have they discovered? Have I done something that revealed it? And it grinds at you and it wears you down. And I know that in the numbers who are here today, with our numbers here this evening, there must be those of us who are struggling with adultery. We're living a double life. And yes, our spouse has not found out. They don't know what's going on. Our family, our children don't know, but we're living a hidden life. And maybe there are those of us who aren't even in adultery physically, but we're in an emotional adultery that means that we have given our heart away to another and not the one that we made a covenant vow to. And we think of this person, and we dream of them, and we long that they would see us and notice us. But this is not the one that I made a covenant vow to. Maybe there are those of us today who are here, and we're struggling with our terrible addiction to pornography. We can't keep away from the sites, and it's become like bondage, and we hate ourselves for it, and we try and cover our tracks, and we delete the cookies, and we make sure that we delete the websites, but it's still there, and we're not dealing with it. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's just an unforgiveness towards somebody who hurt us, and we are angry and we want to get our back at them, and we conceive of these plans and we hatch these plots that we dream would be able to show them how much we're hurting and how much they hurt us and how much we hate them for what they did. And it's wrong. Maybe it's broken relationships because of unkind words. How many of us could be trapped in marital violence, if not physical, then psychological, where we use mean words and mean phrases, and we're always putting our spouse down, and we never have a good thought about them or a good word for them, and we're crushing them under the weight of our unkindness and our unresponsiveness. My dear friends, is your light on? The likelihood is that we're not here because this is where we want to be, but because somewhere along the line, we probably believed one of Satan's lies concerning sin. And there are 3 lies that Satan likes to whisper to us. The first of those lies is this one, where he comes and whispers in our ears, it's okay. Nobody saw you do that. You're okay. Nobody will ever discover. Nobody will ever know. It's a secret. And so it's okay. Well, let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, there is nothing like a secret, especially when it comes to our sin. I don't know whether you've ever heard the story of a man who had just finished college, and he had his freshly minted degree with him, looking forward to a working life, but he couldn't get a job. And he looked all over for a job, in the papers, going round looking for a job somewhere. There was nothing. And he became desperate. I need to put food on the table. I need to pay my rent, but there is no job. Luckily for him, lo and behold, one day he turns in the papers and finds job available at the local zoo. And so he decides, I'm going to go and apply for this. I don't know whether it's along my career line, but if it's the only way I can put food on my table, I'll take the job. So he goes down for an interview, and he sits in front of these, interviewers, these men who sit there with their pens and papers and ask all these difficult questions. And they sit him down and they ask him, "Sir, can you tell us how much you weigh?" And he thinks, maybe they need the biodata, so I better give them that. So he tells them his weight, and they ask, "And can you tell us how tall you are?" And again, okay, maybe that's an innocent question. Let me give it to them. Then they ask him, "How wide are you around the girth?" And he thinks, what? What does that have to do with a job? But I need a job, so give them that. And how thick is your thigh? And he's thinking, what sort of job is this? And they ask him all these weird questions. And at the end of the interview process, they tell him, "Sir, we are happy to inform you that the job is yours if you want it." Nobody's talked about the job as such. And so he says, okay, but what is the job? And they tell him, "Well, sir, and they're looking down sheepishly, and nobody wants to look him in the eye. "Sir, we have been looking for a gorilla all over the world. And we've not been able to find one, and we need a gorilla because it's the main attraction at this zoo. And so we want you to wear a gorilla suit and just pretend to be a gorilla. The kids will never know. And all you need to do is, eat the bananas like gorillas eat bananas. We'll put a bunch in the cage for you. And, once in a while, make gorilla sounds and scratch yourself like a gorilla. And nobody will ever know." And the man thinks, man, is that the way you begin your career? And he decides, okay, I'll do it because I need the job. So come along Monday, he goes to the zoo, puts on his suit, goes into the cage before they open the gates, and he pretends to be a gorilla the whole day. He's eating bananas, he's making gorilla sounds, he's scratching himself like a gorilla, and the next day he goes back, and the next day, and after a week, this gets pretty boring. And so he decides to himself, hey, in elementary school, I used to do gymnastics. Why don't I try a few of my, antics from those classes there? So he grabs the bars and he begins to swing back and forth on the bars and to let go of the bar and to grab the next bar and swing back and forth. And the kids love it. The schools are sending the school buses and truckloads of kids to come, and they're squealing and they're enjoying the gorilla. And he thinks to himself, well, that's pretty boring still. Let me try something a little more risky. And so he now swings on the bars, and then he lets go and he twirls in the air and then grabs the next bar. And the kids are just all over the place, squealing with joy. And he thinks, I can do better than that. So twice now, he swings harder and he twirls twice in the air, and then he grabs the bar. And the kids really love it. And he thinks to himself, I'll go even further. Let's do it 3 times. And so he swings really hard 3 times back and forth. He lets go. He twirls once. He twirls twice. He twirls the third time, but he's pushed too far. He goes over the edge of the cage and lands in the next cage, and it's the lion's cage. And after he's gathered his wits around him, having bumped his head, he looks up, and there in the corner is the lion. And so he starts screaming, help me, someone please help me. And everybody's wondering what's going on. And the lion in the corner over here hears all this commotion, and it looks back and it sees a gorilla. And so he gets up, and it starts advancing towards him, slowly, menacingly. And now the closer he comes, the more now he squeals instead of shouts. And the lion comes up close to him, and he can feel its head right next to his ear and its hot breath, and it says to him, shut up or we both lose our jobs. My dear friends, you can hide for a little while, but your sin will find you out. You cannot keep it hidden. There is nothing like a secret sin. And I'll tell you why. Even in the darkest of dark places, there are three who see what you have done. And the first of those is God himself. Because the psalmist tells us in Psalm 139, verse 11 through 12, if I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be too dark for you. And the night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. It's 2 a.m., you're in that closet, you're surfing the websites, looking at those images that you should not be looking at, caught in the trap and the bondage of pornography, and you think it's secret, you think you've covered your tracks, but God has seen what you are doing. And there is nothing like a hidden sin. And guys, this is true for most of us, that we will not confess our sin until it is made public. And God loves you and I enough that if that's what it takes to bring you back to the place of confession where you will ask for forgiveness and we can turn the page and begin a new chapter where you walk in the grace and the mercy of God, if that's what it takes, then God will do it. When I was in high school, I imagined myself to be the next Einstein, as yet to be revealed. All of 15 years, but I just knew my day is coming. And so we'd do these experiments in the laboratory, and I kept thinking to myself, I will never be able to unveil myself with these teeny weeny miserly little experiments that you do in the chemistry lab in high school. I need big experiments. They give us 0.05 grams of a substance to mix with something else, and everything is so small and minute, nothing ever happens. I want those experiments where I take a beaker full of this yellow substance and I mix it with this rock substance that is black, and you mix them together and they go boom. Those are the sorts of experiments that will unveil the next Einstein. And because the school wasn't about to let me do that, I equipped myself with a full laboratory, microscope, Bunsen burner, beakers, test tubes, spatulas, everything I needed for this next Einstein, courtesy of the school that did not know that it was being so generous. And so lo and behold, one day we're in the chemistry lab, and we are actually working with the substance called phosphorus. Do you remember phosphorus from your high school chemistry? It's that white substance, chalky substance that is always kept immersed in oil. Because when phosphorus comes in contact with air, it spontaneously combusts with the oxygen in the air, and it burns with a white hot flame. And as we were told the properties of this substance that we were going to use in the laboratory that day, I thought to myself, the day has come. The day has surely come. Today is the day of unveiling. And so when they passed round this substance in the beaker filled with oil and goblets of phosphorus inside, we were supposed to take a small piece before the oil dries out. We cut a very, very small, teeny weeny, miserly 0.5 grams of it and then do an experiment of it. But as I looked around, nobody was watching me. And so I took the tweezers and I hunted around inside for the biggest goblet of phosphorus. And still nobody was seeing what I was doing. And I quickly took it out, put it in my handkerchief, wrapped it up, and put it in my pocket so that I could go home and do my experiments. And I passed on the beaker. And here I am working on the tabletop with my little miserly piece to do the class experiment when I felt a warm sensation under the desk. And I looked underneath the desk, and my trousers were on fire. And, there was a white hot flame burning, and I could feel it. I could smell flesh, and I tried to, beat it down and put it out. But phosphorus doesn't react that way. And I didn't know what to do, so I reached for a beaker on the table, and I dosed this thing with it to put it out. And I'd forgotten we were working with dilute sulfuric acid. And so now I'm burning from the phosphorus and I'm itching from the sulfuric acid and I didn't know what to do and I'm crying out and whimpering at the back of the class and everybody's turning around and saying, what's going on? What's all the commotion at the back of the class? And I didn't know what to do and finally I took off my trousers and dunked them in the sink. My dear friends, God exposed me. I thought I had gotten away with it. But if that's what it takes, God will expose your secret so that he can bring you to the throne of grace. But he's not the only one, my dear friends. There is a second who sees our sin. 2 a.m. in the morning, nobody around, and his name is Satan. And Satan will accuse you and expose you so that he can bring shame to the name of God. The Bible calls Satan the accuser of the brethren. And he will run up to heaven as he did with Job, and he will try and accuse you before God. Look at him, look at him. Is this who you died for? Was it worth it? Look at what he's doing. Look at him in secret, 2 a.m. in the morning. This is what you call one that Christ died for, and he will accuse you before God's presence. But that's not enough for Satan. He will then come down and he will accuse God before you. Where was God when you needed him? Why didn't he help you? Why didn't he stop you? And as you fell into sin, you asked for God's help. Where was he? You want to follow him? Give up. And he will accuse God before you. But he will also accuse you before yourself. You're hopeless, you're useless, you'll never amount to anything. You may as well give up your faith. You can't even keep a promise. You can't even walk by the convictions in your heart. You can't even walk by the covenant and the commitment you made to Christ. Give it up, give up, go back to the old life. It's a waste of time. And as though that's not enough, he will accuse you before your friends. Look at him now. This was our Bible study leader. This is the one who used to teach us the word. We did not know that he was drinking wine and preaching water. He's a hypocrite. He's not worth following, and he will accuse you before your friends. At the end of the day, he will expose you because he wants to bring shame to the name of God. But Satan isn't the only one who sees. There is a third. Because the Bible tells us that God has given his angels charge over us. And we don't see them. We're not aware of their presence around us. But they watch over us as God's beloved. And when we are in that closet, under the blankets, at 2 a.m. at night, feasting on porn sites, they see what we do, and their eyes are turned away in sorrow. that one for whom Christ died for would go back to the old ways. My dear friends, there is nothing like a secret sin. There are no secrets from God. Satan sees it and will advertise it, and the angels who have charge over us see what we do. When Satan says it's a secret, it is a lie from the pit of hell. There is no secret. But there is a second lie that Satan whispers into our ear. And it is a lie, oh, it's okay, you can deal with this. I mean, just one time, two times, won't make a difference. You can stop anytime you want, so don't get hung up on it. I'm just trying it, and there's no danger. I can break the habit anytime I want. Well, imagine with me that we were to take the cotton thread that we use to sew the buttons onto our shirts or blouses. If I was to wrap that cotton thread around my fingers once, I could snap it anytime I choose to. It's weak. It can't hold my fingers down. And so I wrap it twice. I can still snap it. 3 times. It's a little harder, but I can still snap it. What I don't realize is that if I wrap it 10 times, and 50 times, and 100 times, and 500 times, that little innocent thread now becomes a rope, a chain of bondage. And I continue to tell myself that I can break this habit, this sin. I can walk away from it anytime I choose. What I don't realize that this habit, this sin has become bondage, and I no longer have the power to walk away. It even dares me to try because it knows that it has held me in bondage, and I can't break its power over me. And so it is a lie of Satan when he says it's just a small thing and you can walk away. It's okay. The Bible warns us in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. It looks innocent and weak and not worth bothering about. We're just going out for a small drink. We're just having a wild party, and we don't realize that seemingly small, innocent, weak sin soon becomes a chain of bondage. And it's a lie of Satan that it's not something to be concerned about. There's a third way that Satan deceives us. And it's when he whispers in our ears, oh, come on, it's just a little innocent pleasure. I mean, everybody's doing it. And you don't have to be so hung up over it. And you don't have to be so, all the time you're drawing these boundaries. You never have fun. You're always killing the fun in the party. Relax. It's just a little innocent fun. The Eskimos, the Inuits, have a way that they deal with wolves that prey on their livestock. What they do is they take that reindeer or that sheep, whatever livestock they have, and they slaughter one, and they collect up the blood. And then they put it in a pot, and they take a double-edged sword, and they hone and sharpen that sword on both sides until it is razor sharp. And then they take a brush, put it into that blood, and coat the blade with that blood, and it freezes over. And then they put a second coat, and a third coat, and a fourth coat, until finally what you have is a lollipop of frozen blood. And then they stick that sword into the ground, knowing that the wolves can smell fresh blood from 3 miles out. And they will hone in on where that sword is. And when they find it, it's a free meal. And so they will lick the frozen blood, and it's cold, but it's fresh. and they will lick again and keep licking and lick it off. And soon the blood turns warm, and soon the blood is flowing. And what they don't realize is that they have cut their tongues to shreds, to ribbons against that blade. And they bleed out and die. My dear friends, that little innocent sin is that double-edged sword. Let me read to you what the author of Proverbs says in Proverbs chapter 5, verse 3 to 5. It reads this way: "For the lips of an adulteress drip honey." Now, I think I'm using the wrong voice. You know, this is like red hot material, X-rated in the Bible. So I need to read it with the right voice, okay? "For the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end she is as bitter as gall, as sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, and her steps lead straight to the grave." My dear friends, sin will promise you pleasures untold. It will promise you joys like you have never experienced. It will promise you the world, but it never delivers. Instead, it delivers death and profound brokenness and deep regret and sorrow and untold sorrow, and it delivers shame and loss and broken families and hurting children and destroyed marriages and unfulfilled dreams. Sin never delivers what it promises. And the one thing you can be sure it will deliver one way or another is it eventually leads to death. The death of your integrity, the death of your credibility, the death of your faith, the death of your testimony. It never delivers what it promises. And when Satan says that it's just a little innocent pleasure, it is a lie. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, is your lamp on? Does the flame continue to burn brightly? Or has sin somewhere along the way come and snuffed it out? And yes, you began that new chapter of your life that was the story of hope and promise. But somewhere along the line, it turned to deep regret and sorrow because of sin. I know that God is in this place. And I know that even as I have spoken, He has been convicting you and I about that sin that you know, I don't know, that is hidden in your life. And maybe it's not the pornography I speak of. Maybe it's not the unforgiveness. Maybe it's not adultery, but you know, because the Spirit of God, even now in this moment, is tapping you on the shoulder and reminding you again, I needed you to be here. You needed to hear this, because yet again I call on you as my child. Come and ask for forgiveness. Confess your sin, that I may restore you. Because the promise of God in 1 John chapter 1 and verse 9 is that if we confess our sins, God is faithful and just and will not only forgive us, but He will also purify us from all unrighteousness. God will not only forgive you and I, but He will also strengthen us and give us the strength to break the bondage and to walk away from our sin. But if we continue to sweep it under the carpet and pretend it doesn't really matter to Him, we deceive ourselves. And God has convicted you today about that sin you've been hiding. We have the opportunity this evening to gather around the table of grace that is the Lord's table. And I want us to conclude this time of meditation by coming together before the table of the Lord, breaking the bread together, drinking of the cup of His new covenant for us, And it's a golden opportunity for you to confess that sin and to ask God to please forgive you, because he promises he will. And he'll give you strength to break away from the bondage.